Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
So how about this horse, Bud? Bazooka.
Oh, anything you want to know about Bazooka, ask me. He's a good mudder.
I beg your pardon?
Bazooka, he's a good mudder.
He's a good mudder.
You sure?
You're ridiculous. How can a he be a mudder?
Sometimes a he is a better mudder than a she.
A he is a better mudder than a she?
Sure.
A she has got to be a mudder, not a he. A he can't be a mudder. A she is a mudder. And a he can't be a better mudder than a she.
Sure he can.
He can't.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with the ever-fashionable David Cohen.
Thank you, Doug.
There we go. And we are experiencing the experience of going to the racetrack.
Yeah.
We have visited the racetrack, Belmont Racetrack in more specifics, on October 12th. We were there with my friend and aficionado of horses and horse owner in the past, and he's been a fan of the track since he's been a kid, John Servider, an attorney from Queens, New York. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind you, Belmont Park.
What did I say?
Belmont Racetrack. It's a park.
Exactly. And why would you say that? It leads us right into the first portion of this show. Why do we say it's a park and not a racetrack?
A park has a lot of entertainment other than just the racing.
So when we visited there, we also visited with my brother, Dr. John Viviani, dentist from Long Island, Huntington. He's here as well. John?
Hi. Good to be back.
Okay.
Anyone else here that you want to introduce?
Tons of people watching and walking
Mom and
by,
Dad, are they here?
Picking up their bags from the airplane that just landed. But while we're at the park, Belmont Park, we experienced what outside? Tell me a little bit about what we saw out there. David, you remember seeing the?
Yeah, well, it was my first time at the racetrack, and I thought it was great. I love being able to be so close to the horses. Before the race, we were hanging out, we were watching them like trot around. I thought that was great.
That would be in the paddock, right? You saw them in the
in the paddock.
Yep.
The paddock.
And there was a playground out there for children.
Kids. It was very family oriented. I like that. I like that a lot. And it was exciting to see the race. It was just really great to be there live and to watch the horses run. I had a good time. I lost money.
Right.
Lost like 53 cents, I think.
That'll happen.
It hurt.
It's part of the game. We're also, by the way, talk about money. We're going to make an in-house bet here between the four of us. We're going to handicap, and we're going to then have the race of the decade, maybe even the race of all time. We're going to have the Everything Old is New Again World Cup. We're going to race the best horses of all time right here, right now, later on in the show. Secretariat, Seabiscuit, War Admiral, Affirmed, Seattle Slew, and Citation. John, would you say that those are some of, it's hard to say, but some of the best horses of all time?
Absolutely.
And why would you say that?
Well, they kind of made racing famous over the years in New York and California, and for young race fans. Obviously in the last 20 or 30 years, there's been several more. There's been several attempts, at Triple Crowns. There's also been a new style of racing where they have the Breeders' Cup. The Breeders' Cup are the greatest horses in the world. They get together every year now, and they try to have like a world championship, a world series of horse racing, which they didn't have 30 years ago.
Right. But as the ones we mentioned, all of them except for Seabiscuit were Triple Crown winners.
Yes.
And so isn't that, I would say, how would you define a Triple Crown winner in terms of the horse's, what would you say, its place in history?
Well, the Triple Crown only refers to 3-year-olds, so that's one of the issues, that a lot of horses become famous as they get older. We had a famous horse called Cigar. His unbeaten streak went on, 16 races.
Right.
So he didn't run in the Triple Crown races. He didn't run in the Derby, Kentucky Derby, Belmont Stakes, the Preakness. So there are different levels of how you would gauge a horse.
Right. The other part of that, though, is that with these today's racing, compared to, and if you're looking at these older horses from, we've talked about the 40s, the 30s, the 50s, those older horses ran 20, 50, 60 times. Seabiscuit, it ran, I think, something about 5 years worth of races. So people got to know that horse, got to know its story. Now, even Secretariat ran like 17 times total. So how do you get to know a horse? I know Secretariat people do know because of his extraordinary ability. But the general fan now, how do they get to learn a horse if they're not around that much?
Well, that's the issue, the stamina of the horse's racing career. And it's been always an issue with horse owners, horse breeders. How do we have the horses race longer?
Right.
And no one's come up with that answer yet.
Could there be some kind of, this is kind of bizarre, but some kind of a law that they would establish within the racing establishment that said, listen, you can't put a horse out to stud until it's 5 years old, let's just say. That sounds ridiculous, right?
It does, because horses do get injured sometimes, and that becomes an issue. How do you maintain their health and safety until they can be able to breed? Not every horse breeds. They become pleasure horses, exercise horses.
Can I ask a dumb question here? What is the lifespan of a horse, typically?
They live to about 20 years old.
Okay.
But they only race for about
the
3 years because they're babies at 1 and 2. They start at 2, sometimes they start at 3. They'll only race to 4 or 5. So the career can only be about 3 years on average.
Okay.
I analogize it, though, back to college basketball. It sounds silly, but when I was growing up, 80s and 70s and maybe even in the 90s, these college basketball players, most of them stayed in till they graduated college. You got to know at least those players for 4 years. You know their story. You got to know the team. There was some continuity. Now they're out after 1 or 2 years. You're not following, really, I don't think, college basketball the way you used to.
Right.
Because you don't know the product. Anyway, that's just my aside on that.
It's a good analogy, yeah.
I think that it's an important thing that horse racing needs to consider. In addition to that, or besides that, they need to consider what's going on at the track. We had a great time at the track. There was about how many people there, though?
I would say probably that day we went, there had to be about 4,000 maybe. It was a relatively small crowd, but a decent crowd. It was a nice day out that day.
Decent crowd, beautiful. But also, we made a notation that each race, the amount of money that was bet on each race was not like $8,000, $2 a person. It was something like $1 million per race, at least.
On average, that's a minimum, yeah.
So where are they betting?
Well, you bet $500,000 yourself, so that brought the average up, right?
And yes, and I won handsomely. That's how you got your raise. So other than that, the question is, like, where did all this money come from?
Well, that's called an on-track handle, where they keep track of how much is bet at the track. But there's off-track handle, which means people bet on the internet, people bet at OTB, off-track betting parlors, people bet at other racetracks around the country and the world.
Right. So it still exists. It's still popular. And in fact, when we went inside of the track, do you remember what you saw inside the track? As we got in, we saw these people sitting, watching TV. What were they doing? Do you remember that? No?
Yeah, they were betting all other racetracks. They were.
Oh, right. Yeah, they were watching other races on the TV.
Right.
And
So
betting.
here we are at the racetrack. There's about approximately 20 minutes between races, and there are people hardcore sitting, watching television monitors, a bunch of them, maybe about 5 or 10 monitors of how many races? Maybe 3 or 4 different racetracks?
More. There's generally 7 or 8 running at once.
So they're betting like every, what would you say? I mean, if you wanted to, you could probably bet on a race every 5 minutes, I guess.
Approximately, yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
And they were doing
It is.
it. And we met a friend of John's in a secluded area. What do they call that area he was at?
That's the VIP section. That was Big Al we met over there.
Big Al, and I had some good quotes from him, but I didn't get his authority to do so. So we'll just quote him in that Big Al he's at the track all the time. I would say probably makes a living at this.
He does have a day job besides that, but
Yeah.
he enjoys it.
Does the day job support this, or does this support the day job?
At times, I think they alternate.
But he loves the track. He has some great ideas we'll get to later on in the program. We'll discuss that in a few seconds. We're back just playing Abbott Costello because out of all the comedy teams, they did lots of routines about the track. As we heard beginning our show, this discussion of Mutter,
The Mutters.
which is classic.
Why did Big Al not want to use his voice on the show? Did he tell you?
Well, he's a professional, and I think that his clients probably would wonder where he is when they're making phone calls to his office and he's not around.
He seemed like a smart guy. Yeah, that makes sense.
If they all knew that where he was, I don't know if that would be preferred. I'm assuming that. What do I know? While we were there was somebody at the track with Big Al that was like a runner or a fellow that ran around. Maybe this guy.
Yeah, we have characters like that at the track.
What did he do? What's he kind of do for a living at this track?
He tries to make a few dollars a day to survive. Basically,
Who was that? What was his name?
Joe.
Yeah, Joe. And Joe.
Old Joe.
Good old Joe. And Joe gave us a lot of laughs because he would ask us, you want a drink or whatever? He'd go get a drink for you, and, you tip him $1. Or he'd say he had a tip for a race, right? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, he'll get you ice. He'll get you a beer.
Yeah.
He knows everybody works at the track.
So he's a facilitator. He's like the grease for the wheels.
Yes.
And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a great experience.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, tell me about what you thought, just generally speaking, about the outside experience, the grass, the flowers, the
It was
paddock.
very nice. The grass and the flowers were nice. No, I thought it was. I didn't know
For your family.
I didn't know how family oriented it was, so that was surprising in a nice way. The best thing I could say about the experience is that I would go back. Now that I've been there once, I would definitely go back. I take my son, my wife, and I think it's just a good family experience. I thought it would be honestly a little more, skeezy, a little low lifey, but it wasn't.
It was a lot of fun.
I liked it.
And
Yeah.
the fun will continue right after these commercial breaks.
What is happening now, Jay?
Well, we're going to return to everything old is new again with Doug and Dave.
Oh, okay. I got nothing else better to do.
Yeah, honestly, these tips are no good. I can be a sure winner on the next race. You should bet on Lucky George. I changed my bet from Lolly C to Lucky George because Lolly C is off a feed.
She's off her feet.
Yes.
What does she eat?
Her father.
She eats her father?
Yes.
What does her mother eat?
She is her father.
Look, Mr. Caesar.
Huh.
Suppose a little horse is born. Where's his papa?
In the pasture.
Now, does the little horse eat the papa?
Oh, of course not. His papa's in the pasture and his father is in the barn.
Does that make sense to you? It does to us over on Everything Old is New Again. Come on back. You're on back and enjoying a discussion about the racetrack and horse racing in particular. John, just for those who don't understand that, what were Abbott Costello talking about there?
Well, people don't understand. There's two meanings to a lot of words at the track. And I don't know, when we were there that day, you were speaking to various characters and people and betting at the windows, and they have all different sayings. I mean, I don't have the notes of that day, but one of the things that I recall that day that I thought your brother John thought was hysterical is that, after the race was over, you just drop the tickets on the ground and walk away. And he was like picking up and trying to go to the garbage pail, and people just drop tickets all over the place.
Yeah, littering is allowed.
Yeah.
I love that they throw it right over their head. Like it's
Talk into the microphone, maybe.
right over their head.
And the funny part is it's just so natural after being at the track for 20, 30 years. You don't even think about it. And other people for the first time would turn around and like, what does that mean? What is he talking about? Why is he doing that? So the same thing with that little skit there, that they're talking about so many different things at one time that if you're not into horse racing, you'd be lost very easily.
Which leads to my question is, there's a little undercurrent of a different mindset. There's also a different ideas to these words, what they mean, and is that lead to an element that this is an intimidating venue for people that are uninitiated to the horse race game, and does that keep them, you think, from going to the track?
I think some people would be reluctant. As much as I've been to the track, when I've gone to the track overseas, and I'll give you an example, going to in England. When they start speaking English, they're not even speaking the English we speak. So I had no idea what they're talking about. For example, we have a daily double. We pick the winners of the first two races, and they call it the forecast. They said, what's the forecast today? And it makes sense when you think about the forecast. Right. You're forecasting the win of the next race after you pick the first race. And they have so many different things they were talking about there, and it was difficult for me. And I was somewhat intimidated to pick up the lingo, the language.
That's interesting, yeah.
Well, no, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was going to say, to me, being the first timer, the betting was confusing to me. I kind of follow what John or Doug was doing. I just, whatever they said, yeah, I'll take that too.
That's the best way to start off generally. You follow somebody and go with their lead. But there was a wagering guide, I don't remember we showed you in the program, which they lay out all the wagers pretty good. And I think they've simplified things a lot. Everything's on computer now. People are more comfortable going to like a touchpad screen and put your own wagers. You don't have to even talk to anybody. I think the intimidation years ago was when you had to go to the window and say, can I have $20 winning place on horse number 3.
No, I felt that because we did go up to the window that day, and I didn't know how to say it, or I was going to say something wrong, and I was going to get a dirty look. It's a bit intimidating.
And also, what about the people behind you in line? If it's a crowded day,
if it's 0 minutes to post,
yeah.
0 minutes to post, everybody's let's go. So now people go to the computer screens, and they have these kiosks throughout the track where you can have your own machine and stand by it all day, put your bets in, and no one even bother you. So I think more people are doing that now, and that's what they bet online too. The same thing.
Plus, also, you could do what I do, and I don't always win at it, but unless the track changes from being, let's say, fast to sloppy or something like that, where it rains, I do it the night before, and I put my bets in 2 or 3 races ahead of time. I know that really a lot of people don't like to do that, but I do that because that relieves the pressure for me. I'm done. I've already done 2 or 3 races ahead of time. I can sit back, relax, and do what needs to be done. A lot of people don't like to do that because it affects your handicapping, right, John? Sometimes you want things change last minute.
Yeah, well, you don't know if there's going to be a late scratch in a race. That means someone's not going to run. Sometimes if it rains, it could be a grass race, and now it's not a grass race. So would have to go back up and change all those bets. But it's not a bad idea if you want to relax in the park and have a beer and a cigar and have a hot dog and talk to your friends and family. So you may be busy. You may miss a race getting online. So now at least my bet's in, and I'll just watch the race.
Yeah, and you want it. I think we want it to be more of we being fans of the race track game. We want people to enjoy and have a social environment there, where you're meeting friends and family or bringing them and having a nice time. So you don't have to have this pressure. Oh my goodness, I got to figure out this race. I can't talk to you for the next 10 minutes. I got to do the handicapping. I got to bet in and all that. It's kind of too much.
Right. If you're a casual fan like me, I mean, it's good to have a vested interest in a race. I mean, it's fun to watch the horses go around, but to have someone that you want to win makes a big difference. So to me, it didn't matter. I mean, just pick a horse for $1 or $2, whatever it takes. That was great. You don't have to bet a lot of money. And so then when you're watching them, you got somebody to root for, even if it was, your horse, Doug, and I didn't have a bet on it. I was rooting, against that horse, but still I had the vested interest in it.
I think we want to bring some fun to the track also. And speaking of old and new, it sounds like the racetrack has been around for a long time, and it has been. But there's some new things going on. Conan himself visited the track and did a race call recently and had some fun with it.
Here we go, and it's pancakes on the griddle as the horses are on. And out in front, we've got, it looks like Blue Collar Boy. It's going in strong, but it also looks like He's a sure call is doing a good job. Bunch of horses out there. Hard to see with these binoculars. All horses look alike when you're not around horses a lot, and they're closing in fast.
That's a little piece of it. He did a lot more than that. He was a comical fun. He went to Santa Anita and had a whole day, did a shtick on it on his show. So, you know, we are in a situation where horse racing is still alive and well. John, tell me about, you know, like the you talk about the Breeders' Cup and other races. You're getting sold out attendance of six-figure people going to these racetracks.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that when you talk about old is new again, the idea is it seems to be handed down. Whether someone is going to the track for the first time, that is the new. You could be 50 years old and go to the track for the first time. That's the new generation for race fans. So part of the excitement was that day just to bring Dave around and show him upstairs when we were up high on the track and down low when we down by the apron, by the finish line, and in the backyard and by the paddock. It was exciting for me just to show Dave that, to get a new fan into it. And I think that's how you continue the progression of getting new race fans. From my grandfather to my father to me to my new friends to my children, it just goes down the line.
And your buddy Big Al had a good idea too. He was talking about making it a destination place. I mean, this facility, Belmont itself, when there are tracks all across the country, that this varies, but this facility can hold over 100,000 people.
They probably could hold 300,000 people.
Yeah, so you can have, I mean, crazy thought. You can have the Pope there. You could have,
The Pope was at Aqueduct, by the way.
Aqueduct's a lot smaller, but
yes.
Yeah, how many people were there? About 60, 70?
More.
How many were there to see the Pope?
Yeah, right.
What race did there was no racing that day, but they used the facility because it's such a large facility. They used Aqueduct.
See that? And the Pope, I know, owns a few horses, but that's a different Pope. Anyway, long story short, is
okay.
The Pope of Greenwich Village. But the reference to making it a destination is important. I think it's a great idea. Use this so that people can, on a Saturday, if there's restaurants there, if there's a club there, there's a bar there, there's other things for children's video games, whatever, people don't have to just go to the track and say on a Saturday night, listen, I got nothing going on, let's go to the track and have a dinner. And by the way, there'll be a race there or something.
Are there plans to do that for any of these tracks?
A lot of tracks have that. Down in Gulfstream down in Florida has that. They have a shopping center, a mall right there, bars and restaurants. There's actually no gate or fencing in between it, so you just kind of go all around. Some hardcore fans, I'm like 50-50 on that, to be honest, because if I'm going to the racetrack, I want to enjoy the good racing. I don't mind that there's shops and bars there, but it may get a little carried away sometimes. Stuff on Ferris wheels. They do at some tracks in California. They actually do the racing at county fairs. So you see the Ferris wheel and all the rides and the kids and the cotton candy, and you see horses running around. It's not a bad idea if you're only going to do it, for 4 or 5 days. They do like a week meet.
Well, how about doing a county fair or these kind of things inside the infield of the track? Would also, once in a while, but it'd probably be distracting, of course, to the race.
It is. That's why they don't really do it on the inside. They'll do it on the aprons on the outside or in the parking lots around it. But they're pretty close sometimes, these little county fairs out in California.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you need to do something to bring people in, bring mom in with, the 10-year-old son to bet 50 cents on a race. By the way, let's go have a hot dog or, play a video game, whatever it might be. See some concert after the Mets are doing it. They're doing concerts after the shows. Baseball stadiums are changing left and right. We talked about, is the hot dog still king at the stadium? If you want to hear that show on everythingoldisnewagain.biz. This is, the world's changing. We need to change with it and bring some fun to the racetrack, which this certainly is.
I think it's also the cost also is a factor.
Yes, we'll discuss that shortly.
Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by the law office of Douglas Viviani. Douglas Viviani has been providing quality legal service for over 26 years. We're a general practice firm and can handle any legal matter you may have for a reasonable fee. If you're involved in a car accident, starting a business, planning your estate, or need a criminal attorney, please call 631-681-1910 or email us at vivianilaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Get the justice you deserve. Contact the law office of Douglas Viviani at vivianilaw@aol.com. This show is sponsored by ResumeDoctorInc.com. When you're looking to change your career, apply for a promotion, or find a job, your resume is the first thing that's seen that represents you to a potential employer. Make sure your resume makes a clear, concise, and professional impression of who you are so you can get the job. Send your resume to ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com for a free online review. You'll receive a reasonable quote to properly prepare your resume. Let us make sure you have a resume that will get you noticed. Send your resume or questions to ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com. That's ResumeDoctorInc.
Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Try your luck on the ponies, boys? No, we want to play the big horses. No. He wants to make a bet.
Here, pick yourself a horse.
Oh, okay. I'll pick a good one, too. Let me look at your form.
Huh?
Let me look at your form.
Well, if you get a kick out of it, okay.
What are you doing?
You asked to look at my form, didn't you?
Nothing of the kind.
Put $10 on a nose.
$10 on the nose.
Put $10 on the tail.
$10 on the tail.
Here's another $10.
What for?
Put it under the saddle.
What's that for?
In case the horse comes in sideways.
Abbott Costello on Everything Old is New Again. We're discussing betting and racing and horse racing and the watching experience. And Dave has something to say.
I like your form, Doug. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, that's what you like. That's.
So you know he's talking about the form, right, Dave?
Yeah, the form in front of him.
Yeah,
the racing form.
Wish my wife would say that. So, listen, it's.
But seriously, folks.
Right, exactly. It's time to just take a look at the Everything Old is New Again network and welcome to the team KLOO in Corvallis, Oregon, or Eugene, Oregon. We're every Saturday morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And we're happy to be with that station, which has been around since 1947. So if you're listening for the first time on that station, welcome aboard and listen to our old shows at everythingoldisnewagain.biz. All our shows are there.
Most of our listeners, I think, were born in 1947, so it's perfect.
It works perfect. Beautiful. I don't know where to go with that, other than to say it's time now to turn to the Everything Old is New Again World Cup. We are going to try to examine this race that we have going to happen in the second or last part of our show between Secretariat, Seabiscuit, War Admiral, Affirmed, Seattle Slew, and Citation. First thing I want to talk to John Servider, our guest, attorney from Queens, New York, and ask him, we're going to make bets today, hypothetically, just basically how do you make a bet? What is the bet option?
Well, generally, if we were betting in this era, it would be basically a win bet, a horse to win, a place bet, a horse to come in second, or a show bet, the horse to come in third. I think that would be the fairest way to do it.
And if if you bet for show and the horse comes in first or second, obviously you win. If you bet to win and the horse comes in anything but winning, obviously you lose.
Right.
Just to get an idea. We were talking about while we were at the track, we had visited the track, you mentioned something about people that used to bet and they were bridge jumpers. Tell us a little bit about what that term is, what that means. It's very interesting, I think.
The minimum return on a bet is $2.10. So when you think about it, it's actually 5%. That's a pretty good investment. Most people wait all year to get 5%, and you'd have to probably wait 4 or 5 years nowadays to get 5% in the bank. But the idea is that you would take the biggest favorite of the day out of all the races, out of all the horses, and you would put, say, $20,000 to show. You'd win back $20,500, $2,100 actually.
Right.
Sorry. So you get back 5%. So you'd make $1,000 on one bet. But if the horse loses, you would need another 20-something bets to get all your money back.
Set you back 20 days, almost a month, just to get to be even.
They would say those guys would jump off the bridge if that favorite did not come in at least first, second, or third. So you had 3 shots at it.
Right. Now, when we go and watch the Everything Old is New Again World Cup, what would be the best place to watch it? Would you want to watch it as a railbird, watching from the stands, something else?
I'd have to watch it from the stands. I would love to be on the second or third floor. I'd like to see the entire track in front of me. I'd like to see the horses making the moves on the backstretch and on the turns. So you really want to have a good view of the races, almost like the track announcer has the best view. He's up on the roof watching the races with binoculars and actually calling the race.
So that's interesting. It's something different than a ball game where a lot of times you want to be right up front and let's say a railbird, which is somebody, that's right at the rail, right?
Right at the rail and usually close to the finish line, but you really can't see anything going on the other side of the track. When you're talking about classic races, they're going to be 2-turn races. So it's not just they're going to be running right in front of you straight all the time. They're going around a turn, sometimes a mile and a quarter, a mile and a half. So it's a long race.
So then on the video screen, you're missing most of that race.
Correct.
If you're up close.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting, totally different perspective than, let's say, a baseball game.
Yeah, I like where we were watching it from because you did, I think that's what you were saying. You were able to see the entire track. You could see the whole race. You weren't obscured. Nothing was obscuring your view. I like that.
Yeah, there's even some tracks that have palm trees. They have regular trees that you can't even see through. But when we went up to the third floor, you saw the whole overview of the track.
That was cool.
And that's where we were with the third floor. Now, you mentioned a term that maybe people may not be aware of when you're listening to a race. And back in the day, by the way, people would listen to the race on the radio. That would be it, right? In the 40s and maybe even 50s and 30s?
Listen, even into the 70s. I mean, there was no live racing on television. There was no racing. There was no internet, obviously. And I remember going to OTB, and that's an off-track betting parlor, and they used to just wait till the race was over, and they would just flash the numbers, who won the race. There was no call. So you'd see about 40 guys standing around one television just to see the numbers go on the board, who won. And then eventually, off-track betting was able to get a live call, a streamed call, where you could at least hear the race. You still couldn't see it. And to watch the races didn't come until sometime in the 80s.
But listening to a race is a skill in that, again, there are terms you may not know. So give us an idea of the backstretch, the far turn, the stretch. What do these terms mean?
Clubhouse turn.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Well, generally, they're given positions of where the horses are on the racetrack.
So tell us which is the beginning to the end.
When you start, we'd have to start with like a 2-turn race, which means most tracks are going to be anywhere from a mile to a mile and a half, which is Belmont.
And by the way, I'm just hate to interrupt you, but our race is at Belmont, a mile and a half. Just to give you an
so
idea.
They're going to start right in front.
Right.
And that's the greatest part of Belmont Stakes is that they're going to start in front of you and they're going to finish in front of you. So you do get that up-close starting gate experience where the horses break out of the gate. When they come out of the gate, they're going into what they call the first turn or the clubhouse turn. The clubhouse turn clubhouse is always on that turn. It's the first turn. You have to remember that they're running counterclockwise now. And then they go into the backstretch, which is the stretch on the opposite side of where you're standing, the opposite side of the racetrack. And then they go into what they call the far turn, because that's the furthest point to the left if you're looking at the horses. And then they'll come into what they call the top of the stretch, and then they'll say they're coming down the lane or down the stretch, and they get to the finish line.
Okay, so if you've listened to that is really interesting stuff and gives you a play-by-play as to what to listen to when we hear our race in the last part of our show. We're getting close to that time, and I think I'll get a little feel. excitement is building here at Everything Old is New Again. John, what do they call that, what we just heard?
That is the call to the races.
And how much time usually is it between that and the race itself?
Well, on that call there, that means when they're coming on the track, usually about 7 minutes.
Right.
Other tracks, they'll ring a bell at Saratoga, means 17 minutes to post. There's all these signals that go on in the background. And just one last thing about distances. Sometimes you'll hear in a race call, they'll say they're at the quarter pole. That's a quarter of a mile left. They're at the 8th pole. They're at the 16th pole. 8th of a mile left, 16th. So depending on if you were blind, think about it, you could actually hear the race call and know exactly where the horses are.
You could also hear this, which would be a little disturbing.
Come down the middle of the track. Come down the middle. Come down the middle. Come on, what? Down the middle. Let's go, baby. Middle, dog. Hit five. Go, go, go. That one. Oh, 3-1.
That's John and I losing at the Belmont October 12th when we were there with the gang. But that, I mean, you can hear a little bit of the excitement there, I don't know, in our voice and cheering the races on.
It's still exciting now. It brings a smile to your face just thinking about it, even though we didn't win that race. Imagine if we would have won that race, how much we'd be smiling.
I had heart attacks at that point. I'm glad they didn't win.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking about our race, just if you want to listen and handicap along at home, the odds for the race that we have coming up is Secretariat's 2-1. We call that the favorite, right, John?
Yes.
And then we've got Affirmed 3-1. Citation is 4-1. War Admiral 5-1. Seattle Slew 6-1. And Seabiscuit at 7-1. So when we handicap, John, does any of that information come into play for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, handicapping is not only to pick the winner, but you're looking to make a couple dollars. And I had asked you that question earlier. Are any odds on this? Because that does affect my handicapping. I'm not always going to pick the favorite, even though he may win.
Right. Little subtext there. I just gave those odds for the first time, and John didn't have that while he was handicapping. So he's laying the groundwork. If he gets it wrong as to who wins this particular race, that is my fault because I didn't give him the odds. That's an old trick by every horse bettor there is.
Well, I already picked the horse I liked. I had handicapped what Doug gave me, and I'm ready to go.
Great. Okay, we're going to get a little tune in here. Listen to My Old Kentucky Home, which is played at every Kentucky Derby, and we'll come on back with some more fun. Kentucky Derby, they play that song. Do you have any history or any understanding what that's all about?
They play before the race, just so you know. You would think maybe they would do it after. They do it before the race, actually. And it's basically, there's so many horses in Kentucky Derby. Talking about 20 horses that have to be saddled. So it's something for some Kentucky pride for the people there. And people cry. They have bring tears to their eyes, actually, listen to that song.
It's an old Stephen Foster song from 1853, and it's an abolition song. It's anti-slavery, and it brings to heart what these people went through back then. We'll be back and maybe have a little pain and discomfort ourselves, betting and winning or losing on Everything Old is New Again.
My name's Wendy Padbury, and I'm listening to Everything Old is New Again.
First race, Blurred Image, is it?
Blurred Image.
Give me the number of Blurred Image.
7.
No way on earth.
You bet an American horse with a foreign jockey out there's bound to be a communication.
8 is the winner, right? The number is the key.
The odds?
The number came to me just as you walked in the door. I'm telling you, the number is 8.
Everybody has a different method to handicapping at Everything Old is New Again. We're busy in the studio, the four of us, trying to figure out who's going to win the Everything Old is New Again World Cup. We're going to turn to our resident expert in that regard and handicap this race with John Servider. John, let's take the first horse, I guess. We'll take them one at a time. Secretariat, what do you think?
Well, listen, all these horses are great horses. I think the main concern you would have before you even look to read about Secretariat, you'd want to know the track condition. Is it raining that day out?
Right, today's a clear, beautiful day.
Beautiful. You'd like to know the jockey who's on the horses. You'd like to know the weight that they carry. I remember back then, they put a lot of weight on horses. That's how they handicapped them as they were running, winning and winning. All these horses have won many, many races. These are great horses. They could run from the top, meaning they can go right to the lead and go wire to wire. They could stalk. They could come from second or third. not too many of them close. As I handicap all the horses, I notice most of them are near the front. So Secretariat's a great horse. I mean, always near the lead, always running good. You know, was beat a few times. The jockey was basically the same jockey. Had a couple different jockeys when it first started. I mean, listen, I like every horse that's in the race, obviously. Coming off the last race, I thought it was a great race. I would also look at the workouts. If they were showing workouts, you know, prior to handicapping is very important. Some horses are coming off a layoff where they might have not run for 2 or 3 months. They might have not worked out. They might have had some slight injury. So there's so many factors before you actually even start handicapping the horses' past performances. That's what we're really looking at, is past performances now.
Now, I'm looking at a past performance here of Secretary, and I see what I'm looking at here, and even in all of 1972, if you look at those early races, almost every one of them, he was 4th, 3rd, 1st, 5th, 5th, 3rd, 5th in the beginning of the race and ended up winning every one of those races. So would you not say that at least early in his career that horse was a closer?
Yes, but you also remember, those were all sprints. If you look back to those races when he was a 2-year-old and before he was 3, they were 6 furlong races. As he stretched out, they controlled his speed when he was a young horse there, but he had natural talent, natural speed. So once he went a little further, the horses weren't running as fast, but he was running fast.
Right, and once he started to get to the Kentucky Derby and thereafter, you can see basically he started the race just about in all these races in first and ended in first.
Yeah.
Which we call the speed, obviously,
Yep.
right? All right, let's turn to Affirmed.
Affirmed was another great horse. I mean, when you look at his races, you know, he's had a few different jockeys. You know, Stevie Cawthon, one of the greatest. Finn Pinkai, you know, the California jockey, great rider. When you look at his races, and you know, when he started off young, again, all short races, but the horse is predominantly has speed. If you look at all the distance races, speed. The funny race that I call off the chart is the Malibu, which was January there. That's a race that they usually wait to start the new year. Actually, it's run on December 26th now, the day after Christmas. But you see, it was only a 7-furlong race. He wasn't ready off the layoff there.
Right.
That was one of his worst races, but he needed that race. So sometimes you have to see what they need.
Right. You can see after his peak, which was when he won the Belmont and the Triple Crown, thereafter he started to lose some races, that's part of it.
You have to give him time off. So he looks like he's coming back into shape. He's run on a sloppy track a couple times, loves the slop, loves the distance. I think this race, as far as I'm concerned, is a little too short for him.
Okay,
too long for him.
Okay, let's take a look at Citation. Got to speed it up a little bit.
Okay, Citation. Citation is the horse that I like. I think this horse could come from behind at any time. He could be rated at any time. I just like this horse a lot on paper. This is the horse that I would pick.
Now,
and when you told me
Carroll's
4-1, I love it even more.
Yeah, and Eddie L. Carroll's running this, and if you're a horse fan of this, if you're looking at this, he ran this horse ran till about 1948 and then was pushed a little bit. Eddie R. Carroll even says this in interviews, and this horse was then hurt. And so in its second part of his career, from 50 to 51, this horse did not do as well. It was injured. But so we're talking about a time frame before that, about the time frame when it won the Triple Crown. Let's look at War Admiral.
And when you talk about push, remember the purses were very low then, so they had to make money. He's a great horse. They didn't make enough money.
Right.
War Admiral, another horse, loves to go to the lead, likes to go head-to-head, likes to battle it out. I mean, he's a great horse. I mean, I don't like the speed. I'm a handicapper that likes to come from behind a little bit. I think there's so much speed in the race, I wouldn't go War Admiral.
Okay, and also War Admiral, just as an aside, is the one that lost to Seabiscuit, which is interesting. It has better odds than Seabiscuit, but it lost to Seabiscuit.
Yeah, and you could even see he ran a race 2 miles and he went wire to wire. Okay. Jockey Gold Cup, so he can go speed as far as he gets pushed.
Now, Seattle Sleuth from 77 and 78 ran 17 races total. What do you think of this horse?
I like this horse a lot. I like Angel Cordero, the jockey for Gene Krugot. I mean, I really think this horse is in great shape. I mean, unfortunately, had a couple of bad steps. Didn't get to prove to be the best, but his career was kind of short.
Okay, and but did have some seconds and fourths, but okay, wasn't perfect. Who is? And finally, Seabiscuit, who ran like 50 races here.
Yeah, Seabiscuit, that's the real workhorse. I mean, could do almost anything. The horse loved to close. If you looked at saw the movie, you see the horse is always closing, but he was near the front a lot of times. He can go head-to-head with somebody.
Okay, well, we're getting close to this race. Stay tuned. Let's listen to this. Let's see what happens.
Just below us, we've noted in the tan-box square that opens onto the track, the winner's circle, tall, sparkling silver trophy for the winner this afternoon.
Horses now loaded in.
And they're off. And Georgie Wolf is up the whip on Seabiscuit to keep him up.
Cattle Slew broke slowly. War Admiral is second by a head. Affirmed. He is in third. The gap of 2.5 lengths to Secretariat, followed by Citation. And the trailer is still Cattle Slew.
And Seabiscuit's got a head advantage with War Admiral second. Down the backstretch. They're halfway down the backstretch. And there goes War Admiral after him. Now the horse race is on.
Secretariat in fourth by a length and a half. Beginning to move up.
Citation.
But here comes Secretariat. He's moving fast, and he's going to the outside. He's going for the lead, and it's right now he's looking for it.
And now War Admiral has a head advantage. Citation.
Now closing also along the inside. The Seattle Sloop drawing alongside again. And the trailer is still affirmed. The pace is increasing as they come to the head of the stretch. It is Secretariat's on the inside.
Watch for them now as they turn into the stretch. Horses under a drive. This is a real horse race. Just what we hoped we'd get.
Seabiscuit on the outside is second by an eighth.
Citation.
Is third by a head. Followed by
War Admiral.
Affirmed. And the trailer is Cattle Slew. On the turn, here's the race, folks. Secretariat finds a hold of it.
Citation.
Under a strong left-handed grip. And he's making it run now. It is still Secretariat holding on. Seabiscuit is third. Followed by
War Admiral.
Affirmed. Closing also along the inside. Followed by Cattle Slew.
It's the best horse from here in. They've got 200 yards to come.
Secretariat has the lead by a half length.
Citation.
Closing also along the inside.
Citation head and head, and it looks like Eddie Arkell has got his derby. They're coming in there just like they were the enemy, riding each other close. And it is Citation coming to the front. He's everything the said he was. He's going to win with his ears pricking. It is Citation by 2, pulling away. And the other horse, Old Town, is hanging on gamely, but that's all he can do is hang on gamely to the second.
Secretariat is second by Seabiscuit is third. Followed by
War Admiral.
Affirmed. And the trailer is Cattle Slew. Oh, look at this! A colossal victory!
And you never saw such a wild crowd. Trying to drown this crowd out here. They're roaring around me.
Well, there we go. The winner looks like it was, of course, Citation, if you could make that out. And then Secretariat, followed by Seabiscuit. Anybody have that?
I had Seabiscuit, Secretariat, and Seattle Sloop.
Well, so that's what they call a loser.
I thought it's set up in my mind. The race set up just like I thought it would. Citation would close and win, and that's how it seemed on paper.
Dave, what do you think?
I thought it was interesting how all the race callers got together and handed off the call to each other. That was it was amazing.
Listen, this is going to be a best of race. It's going to be a best of callers as well.
That was well done, Doug.
I got to learn how to. The quality was poor in some of that, but some of those were old clips. But we'll revisit this within a year or so, and I'll do a little better job. But I had some fun with that, John.
In reality, you could actually check. There's a track announcer. What he does is he does everybody's voice. He impersonates. So during a race, he will sound like 7 different track announcers calling the same race. And we have to get that one down.
If we get him and get him to call it straight out for us, that would be tremendous.
I don't know if he could do it for this race, but we could. I mean, listen, it's awesome.
Yeah, we can have him come on. Everything old is new again, and enjoy a best of race. We'll do that again, but we had a lot of fun today. Thank you, John Servider, for being our guest, John Viviani for sitting by, and David Cohen. We are going to continue our discussion, but I wanted to just enjoy the Albert Costello theme.
Thank you.
We're back. I keep playing Albert Costello only because they were some of the best comedians talking about horse racing. Anybody think of anybody else that talked about horse racing? Here we go. The big Mike, our engineer, is a big fan. He just wants me to talk about Albert Costello. That's it. Anybody else?
A lot of Bob Hope and Bing Crosby movies had horse racing in them. Bing Crosby was a big horse fan, so was Bob Hope.
Bing Crosby was kind of responsible for the advent of Santa Anita, no?
Del Mar,
I'm sorry.
Delmar, in Southern California, yes.
He was huge in horse racing. Loved it, just like Bob Hope sort of was synonymous with golf, I guess you'd say.
Yes.
Right?
Marx Brothers, right?
Marx Brothers, they at the races, yes. Yeah. That's another great comedy team.
Something within the last 5 years I'm struggling with.
Yeah, well,
sadly.
That's why everything old is new again. It's so popular. Come on back.